for Monday, March 26th, 7 p.m. in City Hall Council Chambers. I'd like to call this meeting to order and approve the agenda. First, I'd like to recognize that we're on the unceded traditional territory of the Sishat and the Hupatchisitt First Nations. Councillors, any late items? City Clerk, any late items?
No late items, Mr. Mayor.
A motion to approve the agenda would be in order.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now to the adoption of the minutes. I'd like to motion to adopt the minutes. The special meeting held at 6 p.m. and a regular council meeting held at 7 p.m. on March 12th.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And this is opportunity for public input now. It's an opportunity for public to address council on topics of relevance to City Council. A maximum of 4 speakers for no more than 3 minutes each will be accommodated. But you wish to address council? Please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is John Maba. I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of the Alberni Valley Community Foundation, and I'd like to tell you about our latest project, Vital Signs. Now, first of all, I'd like to just explain that the Community Foundation is one of over 100 community foundations across Canada, and basically our job is to maintain a fund within the community that citizens can donate money to, and we manage the money every year, and then the interest and the investment earnings that come out of that fund are distributed into the community every year. And this year we're going to be distributing about $26,000 at our AGM in May. But I'm here to talk about Vital Signs. The first Vital Signs that we did was 2 years ago, and I'm sure you're familiar with it. Vital Signs is a project of community foundations that is done by over 80 community foundations across the country and some others around the world. And the purpose of it is basically to take the pulse of our community. And a lot of the data that's in the Vital Signs comes from the census. And since we've had a new census since this Vital Signs was published, we decided to update it this October. And this is just a really nice, simple way to take all that data that's in the census that has any regard for our community and simplify it so that people can see some of the strengths and some of the challenges that our community faces. Now we're going to add something new to the Vital Signs this year. It's called Voices of the Community. Valley Voices. And what it is basically is a survey. There's going to be an online survey, 59 questions, which seems like a lot, but I actually went through the survey myself already, and it really didn't take me more than about 10 minutes to go through. Just simple check, 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 you know, which do you like best? And some of the areas that people in the community will have an opportunity to express their opinion about our community are things like arts and culture, belonging, the sense of belonging in the community, leadership, children and youth, the environment, the gap between the rich and the poor, getting started in the community, so what it's like to be a newcomer here, health issues, housing, learning opportunities, safety, public safety, seniors, and work. So it's a pretty comprehensive opportunity to just express ourselves about what it's like to live in this community, and basically, you know, kind of how happy and how satisfied or how unsatisfied we are with various aspects of the community. So I just want to encourage each of you and our listeners back home to go to AlberniFoundation.ca. Yes, that's what it is. And there's a link there to the Survey Monkey is what powers the thing. So anyway, it's I think it's a pretty interesting survey. And one of the little things about it is if you hit a question that you just don't really know what you want to put, you can just skip it. you know, or if you get tired at question 30, you can just stop and exit, and you'll still be counted for the ones you answered. So, thank you very much.
A quick question, John, are you hiring a researcher to put it together?
We are, yeah. Maggie Hodge-Kwan has agreed to do this again for us this year.
Okay.
And she actually wrote the survey, and I was pretty impressed. So if you want to see what Maggie came up with for this year's survey, then go to the website.
Okay.
AlberniFoundation.ca.
Very good.
Great. Thank
We'll
you.
put a link on our city
Okay,
website.
that would be great too. Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, anybody else wish to address council? In that case, that brings us to our delegations, and we have one delegation, and that's from Timber West, and Domenico Iannadonardo is here to talk to council. Domenico, welcome.
Great to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Your Worship and Council. Yes, I'm Domenico, Vice President Sustainability and Chief Forester at Timber West, and I am here to talk to you tonight about one of several expectations and commitments to responsibility that Timber West has for the communities that it operates in and around. And tonight it's about public recreation. I see you have a lovely mural here, recreation, a refreshment of the spirit or the body or both, and couldn't agree with you more. In Timber West's history, it's seen an evolution over the century that it's been operating of public expectations, and we've embraced those. Think about things like how forestry has evolved for fisheries, habitat management, for drinking water management, rare, unique sites and species, First Nations involvement in management of this resource, this great renewable, carbon-friendly resource over the years. Public recreational access to private forest land certainly belongs on that list. It's one that we take very seriously, and it's one that we look to evolve with the communities in which we operate around. So the basics here on this map is Timber West. Up north, for information, we do have public land tenure. To the south, in the darker blue, is our private managed forest land. You'll see that we have a significant contiguous forest to the north of Port Alberni, and we have a significant managed forest to the south of Port Alberni. Port Alberni itself, where the red arrow is, Timber West is not as prominent of a manager on the landscape, but nonetheless, my summary here of our access policy will apply and give you a sense of what we do across our significant land base on Vancouver Island. So I'll just go through the list there. Of course, we'll talk about how you get permission and how we facilitate access to our land in my next slide in more detail. The rest of this list really goes through the things that you need to be prepared to accept if you're going to be on Timber West managed forest land. So avoid active harvesting or road building areas. They're not typically somewhere you want to be when they're active anyway. Of course, fire restrictions. You need to be aware of those and follow those at all times. Certainly, drive carefully, give right away to logging truck traffic. It's more basics. And gates, well, be aware when they're going to be open. We do our best to communicate that. Certainly be aware that they could be closed, and we certainly take all caution we can to make sure nobody's ever closed behind them. We'll give as much notice as we can, and I'll talk about camping in a moment, but certainly all safety and environmental regulations apply, and anyone on our land base will be expected to adhere to those. So let's talk about access and how it happens. I just took this from our website and our Facebook page. We have a principle at Timber West that public recreational access on Timber West private land is a community responsibility. It's something that we, as Timber West, need to lead and evolve and resolve with the communities that we work with. Here's a list of examples that we have agreements with organizations who are committed to expanding that philosophy and expanding the responsibility, the shared responsibility of safe and reasonable access to our private managed forest land. We have a couple arrangements on this list with mountain bike clubs. You see the Nanaimo Mountain Bike Club. A couple bullets down, you see the United Riders of Cumberland. And in both cases, We have additional partners in that in the form of the local government for the mountain bike clubs and also other forest companies. So we have standards for trails, standards for guests, generally encouraging responsible use of these neat features that we have on our private managed forests, but also ensuring a basic standard so that safety and environmental expectations and results do occur. Fish and game clubs, certainly access during hunting season is something we facilitate wherever safety allows. And by working through clubs, again, like with the mountain bike clubs, we're encouraging public to become members of these clubs. So it's good for the clubs to expand their membership and their philosophy of conservation and appreciation for these resources. And we're also working through the reality that it's impossible to work with the thousands and increasing population of individuals directly as a company. So working through clubs is very efficient, and it's something that we will continue to do going forward. Also, we have some public commitments and partnerships, Trans-Canada Trail, for instance, the Aerosmith Trail. These are open to public and no membership needed. And we continue to work with pilot projects on some off-road vehicles in our North Island operation, and are continually inviting members of the public with organized groups to send applications to be part of the Timber West recreational family on our private managed forest lands. And really finally, just to point out an important part of our public recreational opportunities are our campsites. We have 8 of them. 3 on our North Island operation, and we have 5 in and around Cowichan Lake and the Nanaimo Lakes. I've also leaving behind here a bunch of brochures for you. It's also all on our website, of course, but please take a flip through that and know that Timber West looks forward to hearing from you as one of our very important local communities, and any other groups that have ideas about how we can continue to expand that philosophy of shared responsibility and community involvement for this very unique feature of recreation on the great managed forests of Vancouver Island. Thanks very much.
Domenico, thank you for accepting the invitation to present. It's great to get this information out. You talked about trails, and you said standards for trails. So do you allow mountain bikers, if in working with you in partnership, to actually construct mountain biking trails on your property?
Yes, we do. That's an important part of those arrangements. We had our first version of those type of arrangements with the Cumberland Mountain Biking Club, the United Riders of Cumberland. And an important part of that agreement is reference to, I believe it was developed through Whistler and North Shore Mountain Biking Clubs as the standard for mountain biking trails. It's a bit of a global reference. Mm-hmm. And we ask for notification with simple response processes for proposals to update or create even trails within our private land base. And we have a simple approval process based on those standards.
So if the trails are built, are they at risk of being logged over and then having to be rebuilt, or do you make sure that they're put in an area where they're not going to get impacted?
So most of the trails are historical, and they've been there for decades, and trees grow up around them based on our previous plantations. And what we have in our commitment is that we will preserve these trails and in some cases harvest around them. But part of our harvesting includes opening those trails up right away and allowing for our reforestation and mountain biking to proceed almost simultaneously after harvest.
Okay, thank you. Council questions? Councillor Paulson?
Once again, I commend you guys for this approach, and I find it to be a proactive approach. This is a hot button topic, right?
Really?
Really? Yeah. And we also know that there are people who don't respect what you're trying to do, but there are the greater percentage of people that respect and understand their heritage in the woods and stuff. But I guess my question just comes around to, in your list of things there wasn't really an off-road or quadding club listed now. Is that something that's just kind of evolving, mm-hmm. or?
So you can appreciate that the elevation of potential for either injury or damage to the environment goes up as motors get introduced into the system. So hiking, horseback riding, mountain biking, we've evolved quite far along on those aspects. We currently have a trial in our North Island operation with an off-road vehicle club out of Courtney and Campbell River. And we're learning through that. The pilot's going well, and there's definitely potential to expand that.
Thank you. I just wanted to say thank you for coming and for providing the information. I know Timber West doesn't have a huge amount of control sort of in this immediate area, but I've been to a few of those campsites on the south side as well, and you know, they're fantastic. So I think that the biggest thing is just trying to come up with a relationship between the public and all of the landowners that works for both. So I commend you for you know, being part of that process, and hopefully we'll be able to find something that makes sense. The one trail that I know I've enjoyed lots is that CPR trail.
Great. Awesome.
by Cameron Lake. It's a fantastic trail. And it's hard, I would imagine, to sort of log around that or manage the forest around that, because there's a lot of different terrain in there. So
yeah, we've certainly done a lot to accommodate that trail in particular, and we'll keep monitoring it and learn from it as we continue our management in and around it.
that's great. Thanks.
Anything else, Council? Well, Domenico, thank you so much. I heard a couple of weekends ago about a contractor who had just moved a new machine out into an area just beyond Great Central Lake, so probably not your area, but significant damage done to it the very first weekend that it was out there. So obviously there continues to be some concern about responsible access to the woods, so that, you know, those things cut both ways.
Appreciate your acknowledgement of that, and we certainly will not let the small percentage of negative events interfere with our belief that there's a general appreciation and responsibility out there to work with.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your approach, because I would hate to see access to the forest just terminated because of something like that.
Thanks very much.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. Okay, Council, that brings us to unfinished business. First item is from the CAO about the McLean's Mill Society, so turn this over to Mr. Ply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council will recall that on March 12th, at your March 12th meeting, there was a report from me in response to some questions from the public about McLean Mill Society. And that report, so there were responses to the questions. And that report did bring to light one matter, and I'll just ask Alicia to scroll to the bottom of the report. I think there's a heading further discussion. There you go. And so that matter that came to light is that, let's see if I can not confuse this situation further, that the corporation of the City of Port Alberni is the only member of McLean Mill Society. And because Council has not delegated that authority to staff, then Council will act until further notice as the member of McLean Mill Society. So when McLean Mill Society has an annual general meeting, which they plan to do in April of this year, then Council will need to assemble as Council and consider any motions and act collectively as one member. So that means, and because you have rules regarding how you can come together and act as Council, we'll have to have an agenda for you and post public notice and that sort of thing. And any decisions that you make as a member of McLean Mill Society, you'll have to have moved and seconded and debated, just as you do here. So it's not impossible, it's just a little bit, maybe a little bit cumbersome. And one of the suggestions is that Council could delegate that authority as a McLean Mill Society member to a staff member, for example, the city clerk. And in that case, the city clerk could take Council input prior and could go to the AGM and act as the member. It would be a lot easier to undertake. I would suggest to Council that you try it once first as a Council. So you go to the 2018 AGM, is my suggestion, as Council, and collectively act as the member of McLean Mill Society and see how that feels. And if after that you want to streamline the process, you can delegate that authority to a staff member. How does that sound?
Well, frankly, it is what we do with the community forest. And so those members of council that can, there's this incredible echo, it's just driving me nuts. Sorry, I don't know if it's just me or maybe it's something wrong with my ears, but there's quite an echo. Okay, that's better. Thank you. When those members of council who are able to make it to that meeting deal with things as we need to at that particular meeting, and it doesn't seem to be a big issue, although we aren't voting at that time.
That's right.
The difference this time would be that we are needing to vote as the one member on some proposals.
That's correct. The community forest is a corporation for which we are the 100% shareholder. And so that differs from the society that McLean Mill Society is, for which we're the member. So
right.
So it differs in that way.
Yeah, so it's a different construct in terms of
Yes.
its overall management. I get that, but I like your suggestion, and we try it out for a year and see what happens, and we might think it's terrible and want to overturn it, but it's, until you try it, you don't know what it's going to feel like. But I'm just my suggestion. I don't know what the rest of council feels. Councillor Sauvé?
I like the fact that we might have the city clerk representing us there. The only concern I have is to go as a whole as council. Do we debate between each other before each vote at the AGM, and it comes to be a time-consuming thing? With the forestry committee, we have one representative there that represents council. Does the rest of council know exactly what's going on at times? I'm not quite sure about that. But, you know, I would like to see something that the agenda is already in place, any motions to be voted is already in place, and that council is given that information and to be proper delegate the city clerk as into voting appropriately for council. So, you know, I don't want to leave the onus on the city clerk at that spot to make a decision on behalf of council. I would like to see it coming back to council, but again, it's all time restraint. So that's the only concern I have.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just make a point of clarification. Council has chosen to appoint a liaison, a member of council, to a number of committees, and also to the Community Forest and to McLean Mill Society. In those cases, that's a liaison. There's no authority delegated to that person, so that person does not speak for council or act for council in any way. It's just it's a relationship. It's a communication path. So we shouldn't assume that is a decision making or give the public the impression that is a public or a decision making process. It's not.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Minions, and then Councillor Alberni.
Thank you. I'm just wondering if it would be more transparent if we had the agenda here to discuss and debate in council, where people are used to us discussing and debating things, and then gave our direction to the city clerk, rather than council as a whole going somewhere else, where it wouldn't necessarily be, you know, live streamed or anything like that, and debating sort of out of our normal place. I don't know what the format of their AGM is going to look like, but because this is our normal place of doing business, it would make sense to me to bring the agenda here and have the debate here where people sort of expect it to be first. So that's just my thought.
Okay, thank you. CEO?
Mr. Mayor, council, should you delegate the authority to a staff member, you could still debate matters here and give direction to that staff member. And then when there's an AGM, that staff member would go there and bring the message or the direction of council. We could, I mean, there's options. We could ask the McLean Mill Society to conduct their AGM here in this room. But my feeling is that the McLean Mill Society needs their own autonomy. They need to not have to come to council to run their AGM. I think they need to have that on their own venue, on their own turf, but we need to interact with them as the member. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. So I think you're describing what could happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't think, Mr. Mayor and Council, I don't think that. I think if we make that decision now, There might be some misconceptions around, councils abdicating that authority, or, and for example, Councillor McClellan is not here. He is the liaison to McLean Mill Society. Council may want to take his input on this before you make a decision. So it seems to me that to let this go for 1 year, interact with the McLean Mill Society as a collective and see how that feels. And if you want to keep doing that, great. And if you want to make a change, you can make a change then. That's my recommendation. You don't have to follow it.
As always.
As always.
Thank you. Councillor Alberni.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with what Councillor Sauvé and Councillor Minions have said. I think it probably does make more sense for that autonomy to happen now rather than later. As much as I think it would be fascinating in a way for council to convene in the middle of a AGM of a different society, I don't think that fascination is a reason to have it necessarily. My understanding is from the Society Act, the society has to give a month notice in order for an AGM to happen. So if that's the case, then as long as, sort of we had that month notice and that agenda, like Councilor Minion was saying, we could look over the agenda, give some direction to the city clerk, and then have that go off to the AGM.
With the month's notice, there's certainly ample time in order to respond to that.
Yeah, as long as it all kind of fell in line with our council meeting or whatever.
Okay, before I come back to Councillor Sauvé, Councillor Paulson.
I fall into the same thinking there. I think it would be very disruptive for an AGM for us to have to formally stop and form a council meeting within that meeting. And if there's an opportunity to give direction before the meeting to city clerk to move forward, and I'm prepared to make a motion to have the city clerk represent us at that meeting. I think sooner than later is a good thought.
Are you saying provided that we see the AGM agenda beforehand?
For sure.
So is that your motion that you want to make right now?
Well, I would move to approve the city clerk to act for the city of Port Alberni, to act on our behalf at the McLean Mill Society as a McLean Mill Society member.
Okay.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. And so Councillor Washington, and I know Councillor Sauvé was waiting to speak again, so let's just hear Councillor Washington first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just, in absence of our city clerk, is she given the okay to take on this position, or
I'm sure she'd be thrilled.
is she going to come home from vacation and go, what have you done now?
I found quite often you go to the washroom, you come back elected.
You get a job.
The city clerk's aware that the matter is in front of council. I think she has mixed feelings about it.
Okay, Councillor Sauvé, then Councillor Allen.
Yeah, I had the same questions as Councillor Washington. My biggest concern is the way to McLean Mill, when they come with their monthly reports, is that we used to get the monthly financial reports, and we don't anymore. And, and any of those financial reports are not released unless it goes through the committee to get approved before it comes to us. So if there's any way to prevent that, and having a representative there to represent us and deal with those issues, it would be a great asset to me. But again, I second the motion because I fully support it. But again, it's like the mayor would say, a month is a good ample time to get the agenda and for us to debate any matter we have, and for her to be prepared, if willing, to represent City Council.
In this case, it may not be a matter of if willing, but Councillor Alberni.
Thank you. The only other concern I had was that I'm sure, at least I hope, that the AGM would be public, so it's open to the public. I don't know how the society is going to manage sort of getting that word out, but it would be good at least for the city to be able to help amplify that so that the public has an opportunity to be part of that, because it should be an open public process, so hopefully the public can have a chance to be there.
And hopefully, well, I would imagine they'd be advertising in the local newspaper as well. Councillor Minions?
Thank you. My only question was if we are going to hold our debate for the AGM at a regular council meeting, which is what I think we're getting at, then would there be a representative from McLean Mill Society here if we have questions while we're debating, since we wouldn't physically be there with the board? we're sort of taking over their AGM.
I think it makes sense that they be a representative here if you're dealing with a McLean Mill Society matter. As an example, I think we are just about, if we haven't already, to support MMS in putting out a call for directors. And so we'll be supporting the McLean Mill Society in receiving applications for membership, and that would be a decision that council would make as the member of the society. And so you might make that decision ahead of time, and then if you were to delegate this authority, then the city clerk would bring that direction as the member to the meeting of the McLean Mill Society. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, so could we just hear the motion, please?
Feel free to wordsmith.
Thank you. So move to see the city clerk act as member of the McLean Mill Society for council, provided the agenda is given in advance for council's discussion.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion?
Like I said.
Carried. Okay, thank you, Council. Brings us to staff reports. Councillor Washington, under accounts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the certification of the Director of Finance dated March 26, 2018 be received, and checks numbered 141-162 to 141-236, inclusive and payments of accounts totaling $469,614.11 be approved.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. And Chief Administrative Officer, annual exempt staff and council remuneration increases for 2018. CAO, do you need to speak any more than the report you already given to council?
Mr. Mayor, I think I would like to speak to the report.
Okay.
If you don't mind. So it's that time of year again when we discuss increases to the salaries of exempt employees and to councillor remunerations. And for the public, exempt employees are those employees of the city who are not members of a collective bargaining union. So if we scroll down to discussion, please. The start of the report has a lot of background to how we got to the policy that we have now. Under the discussion, which is up on the screen, as background, as of January 1st of this year, our QP employees received a 2.25 wage increase, and our firefighter employees a 2.5% salary increase. And the 2017, the previous year, BC Consumer Price Index increased by 2.1%. So we canvassed several communities, as you can see on the table. There's variations across the province. Primarily, councillor remuneration increases. Most communities that we canvassed add an increase each year, the same amount that the BC Consumer Price Index increased the previous year. So that's fairly cut and dried, except Campbell River, who had done a consultant report a couple of years ago, and that consultant projected that CPI would be 2% this year, and so missed by 0.1, I guess. And in Campbell River, again, on the exempt salary side, they had predicted a 2% increase in inflation, so that is their what they gave to their exempt employees as well. Qualicum Beach has a policy that exempt and council will get consumer price index increases. Parksville doesn't have a policy. They have a practice to give their exempt employees same increases as their QP employees, but they are currently bargaining, and so they don't know yet what that will be for 2018. And in Parksville, they also try to top up any salaries that have fallen behind market to stay competitive, they tell me. Powell River, a little bit of a twist. They use consumer price index, but as of October of the previous year, and as of October it was 2%, not 2.1. And we canvassed Quesnel as well as a similar forest-based economy community, and they give their QP increases to exempt, and QP there bargained for 2% for this year, so that was what the exempt employees got. And in Quesnel, 2.1 for the council members. So council did better there than QP and the exempt, so I'm sure they're pleased in Quesnel. This is an awkward thing for council to have to vote on, but it is our policy, and so it's in front of you now as it was last year. Mr. Mayor, if there's any questions. So I should add as well that our budget includes a 2% increase across the board for council remuneration and exempt employee salaries. So if you were to approve the 2.1%, that would be $2,350 over and above what's in the budget, and the budget can accommodate that small amount.
So the $2,350, that includes the extra $150 for all of council, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wholeheartedly agree that we have to stay competitive or we're going to lose our good people in the exempt staff. I believe it was Councillor Alberni last year that said he feels kind of weird voting yourself a raise. And having said that, I think that we have to look at that in order to attract. We have an election coming up, and we've got some young people out there, and of course, they've got to shift their lives because this is a life-shifting job, and so I'm in favor of the CEO's report.
Thank you. Councillor Soe?
Stupid question of the day. Is there any way that we could separate salaries of elected officials to exempt staff?
Yes, they are separated, so so it's not a stupid question. Exempt staff salaries are set by policy of council, and council remuneration is set by bylaw that council approves. So the two there's two different mechanisms to drive them. I put them in the same report because you need to address them both.
Okay, so we could vote on this separately?
Yeah, council can do whatever they want to do, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So we made a decision a few years ago that we would change the way of getting to this decision by voting on it each year rather than just having it come automatically, which is the way it was previously. So that it's clear that each time it comes up, we make a decision if we want to proceed with that.
I know, I would like to see it separate from exempt staff and council members, elected officials.
Okay. So I don't see there's any more questions or comments. Councillor Sobe, do you want to move receipt of the report?
That the report from the CAO dated March 16, 2018 be received.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. And Councillor Sobe.
That Council of the City of Port Alberni authorize an increase to exempt employee salaries and council remuneration of 2.1% effective January 1st, 2018.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Then we get into the next item, Council, which is Manager of Economic Development. Mr. Deacon, Smart Cities Challenge.
Mr. Mayor and councillors, I am going to give you a verbal report on our response to the Smart Cities Challenge. And I'd like to start it with a 1 minute and 51-second video.
Communities of all sizes and across Canada still face challenges that traditional solutions have failed to solve. How can we improve how we move around, earn a living, create safety and security, protect our environment, learn, live, and play? The Smart Cities Challenge will give communities a platform for implementing bold ideas to address priorities using innovation, data, and connected technology. What if emergency responders could use data to find more efficient routes to respond to distress calls? Or what if high school students in remote communities could participate in virtual classrooms with students across the country? The Smart Cities Challenge calls on communities from coast to coast to coast to come forward with their best ideas. Winning communities will have their ideas funded through prizes of up to $5 million, $10 million, and $50 million. The Smart Cities approach is all about building the communities of tomorrow, which will take everyone working together. So reach out to your community leaders to contribute your ideas. Communities will have until April 24, 2018 to submit their applications. Finalists will be announced in summer 2018 and winners in spring 2019. Visit the Government of Canada's new challenge website at impact.canada.ca and join the conversation on Facebook and Twitter with #SmartCitiesCanada.
Thanks, Lisha. So, Council, I believe everybody was familiar with it before I stood in front of you, and I was just wanting to refresh people's minds. So, a smart city or a smart community is, by definition, one that uses technology, data, and evidence-based innovation to improve its its livability and opportunities for its community members. Smart cities have the potential to improve every aspect of community life, how people move around, how they live, how they play, how they earn a living, how they learn and are empowered to participate in society, how they interact with the natural environment, and how they create safe and secure public spaces. So the competition is, as you will see is giving one prize of up to $50 million that's open to all communities, regardless of size. Two prizes of $10 million, open to all communities with populations under 500,000, and one prize of $5 million, open to all communities with populations under 30,000. So the webinars on the challenge have featured communities that have focused on problems such as the lack of affordable housing, addiction, other social issues like unemployment, and then moving on to transportation and the environment. I fully expect that every city, or almost every city in Canada, large and small, will be competing. Very few of them have declared specifically what challenge they are going to address. A few exceptions are Edmonton has declared a healthy city is their challenge, as in physical, mental, economic, and social health. Montreal has declared that they are taking on the challenge of how to improve the city's vitality by increasing accessibility of services in a fair, sustainable, and inclusive way. And closer to home and closer to our size, Penticton has declared that they will be using technology to solve real challenges around feeling safer, more connected to others, growing a thriving arts and culture, a more sustainable community, and physical and mental health. So pretty much of a hodgepodge. And our challenges, I might say, are similar. I mean, I would say that ours include reconciliation, a variety of social issues, addiction, poverty, unemployment, high numbers living on social assistance, poor health, aging demographic, and then moving on into environmental degradation, declining numbers of wild salmon, food security, watershed protection, climate change or climate disruption, an infrastructure deficit, negative press or impressions of the community, and so on. So the competition is really about declaring what your challenge is and then suggesting how you're going to move to overcome it. And you get almost as many points for declaring what your challenge is in 50 words or less as you do in putting forward a solution, which doesn't have to be thought through thoroughly. And in fact, after the application deadline of April 24th, the federal government and their panel will review all of the proposals that they've received, My bet is they won't get them all done by summer, but they are committed to trying to do that. And then they're going to select 10 finalist communities to compete for those prizes, and each community will get $250,000 to develop your business case for how you are actually going to resolve your challenge. So we're up against competition. Vancouver and Surrey are partnering in their response to the challenge. The South Island Prosperity Project, which represents 11 of the 13 municipalities in the Lower Island, are partnering together, and several communities in the West Kootenay. And some of these communities have offered prizes, significant prizes, for contributions that they could use towards their April 24th submission. South Island Prosperity Project, for example, gave away $15,000 to each of 3 finalists in a competition that they launched for some ideas. So although the odds seem about as good as winning a lottery, we are up to the challenge, and we are putting a proposal forward. As the South Island Prosperity Project said in one webinar that we watched, that even if they aren't successful in winning one of these awards, there'll be a long way towards addressing the problems that they have by having declared that, having engaged the public around it, and having put forward some ideas. So I wanted simply to let you know that we are engaged, and we have been looking at the issue. We are going to be asking the community's assistance in identifying and phrasing the problem in 50 words or less, and we'll be putting that out on our Facebook page. But we are also adopting an engagement platform. Some of you may know it is called Bang the Table, and we will be opening that to the community for an opportunity to tell us what they think should be included in our application and how we might go about addressing those. And finally, I will mention that we have engaged a small consulting team, Michelle Lowry Arts, and they are more than the arts, to assist us in our application. And so that's the report.
So how do citizens of Port Alberni connect with Bang the Table?
So I'll turn that over to Alicia.
If I may, thank you. So Bang the Table is going to be coming online, I think, in the next week, and I'll be doing a large social media campaign to drive people to that website and sign up. I don't yet have the domain registered, so that will be coming in short order. And then in addition to that, we're hoping to put on a bit of a competition to draw people into their registration and participating on the platform.
Okay, thank you. And one last question. My understanding is that the $10 million prize is only for large cities, and the $50 million and the $5 million are for any communities.
Well, the $10 million prize says it's open to all communities with populations under 500,000. So theoretically, we could compete for any prize level because we're under 30,000. So we can compete for the 5. we're under 500,000, we can compete for the 10, and we could compete for the 50 because it's regardless of population.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I just remember what the Prime Minister said when he announced this in Ottawa.
I might add that in terms of engagement beside the Facebook page, we'll be using some of the same mechanisms that we used to get 940 people, 943, to respond to the rebranding survey that we did about 2 years ago. So in that instance, we were making use of every social media and every organization that had a following. We also had notice inserted in grocery bags. We went out to the community where we know people interact a lot, so coffee shops, hairdressers, barbers, that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you. Council questions? Mr. Deacon, thank you very much for your great report. It's an interesting proposal. I'll be keen to see what we come up with in the end.
Come back to us when we win.
Okay. I just one final thing. I cited a list of problems or challenges that we face as a community, and we've given it a fair bit of thought. We are very open to public input on those challenges and how they're phrased, and we won't be declaring what the challenge is that we're taking on in the specific wording until we've submitted. And the reason, it's the same reason that most of the other communities haven't done. They're not wanting to tip their hand or give a competitor a leg up or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Paulson, do you want to move receipt of it?
So move, Mr. Mayor. Receipt of the report.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Okay, Council, that brings us to our current status report. And I know I have a few questions, but there may be some council as well. So, Councillor Washington, let's start with you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could we get an update on number 18, which is develop a purchasing policy that supports local vendors and contractors? I see we revisited back in December, but if we could get an update for the next council meeting, I would appreciate that. And then following down, item 22, people on the street want to know what's happening with the Arrowview Hotel, if we can get an update on that at the next meeting. And finally, we've got 32 items on this status report. Development Services is taking credit for 12 of them. And just a question for CAO. If our bylaw manager comes in, will he relieve Mr. Smith of some of the bylaw-related items on the status report?
I would say absolutely.
I would say thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Council, on this? Then CEO, I'd like to get an update on the RFP for solar, number 20. I'd like to know where we're at with the long-standing issue of secondary suites, number 21. And because there's definitely a lot of interest in that, had 3 emails about that very issue in the last little while. And then the last one for me is the Stamp Avenue, number 32. Where are we at with the bike path? We did put money aside for that, so wanting to see where we're at with that.
Mr. Mayor, I can speak to the solar now, and
Okay.
Mr. Smith is in the room. He can speak to a couple of the others. So the solar RFP, I know we promised it to you quite some time ago. We've developed the document, and we've retained an engineering firm to basically assess our buildings to see if they have the ability, the structural strength and integrity to support that load on the roof. And as you know, we have a lot of older buildings, so we're a little challenged that way as far as the capacity to put more load on the roofs. And we haven't yet got that report from the engineers, and things are busy out there. Our engineering firm tells us that they're working on it, but they just haven't got it done yet. So I apologize for not having it to you sooner. We'll push them and get that as soon as we can.
Okay, thank you. Any of the others you're able to
I
respond
think I'm
to?
going to ask Mr. Smith to speak to the Arrowview Secondary Suites and Stamp Avenue.
Okay, thank you.
So in regards with the Arrowview, I haven't been able to put a ton of time into that, but what I will commit to council is I will do my very best to have the next step, which is a report coming to council at the April 23rd council meeting. Stamp Avenue, we have been doing some revisions to the design work that's not complete. I'm in the process now of making a grant extension application to Bike BC. Need to have that done this week in order to have the grant extended. While we're working on that revised plan that would then have to come before council. And on the secondary suites, I have not had time to work on that in quite some time. I do need to reiterate with council that currently the ongoing development applications are taking the vast majority of my time, and that includes ones that have been through council already that are, you know, undergoing and trying to get through the approval process or construction process. I'd be pleased to try and answer any other questions.
No, well, for me, just getting the update of where we're at with this, because like the rest of council, we get asked questions and tell us what's going on, and this helps. This helps. Okay, thank you.
I'll keep slogging away.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is good to hear about those, you know, the developments and where we're at with those, so thank you. I appreciate that.
I think you're going to, I mean, there's a number of ones that have been before council that are ramping up to begin construction. So I think we're going to have a very busy construction year this year.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. Councillor Minions, could you please move receipt of that report?
Move receipt of the current month status report.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And then, council, it brings us to our manager's monthly reports. We have one that we're looking at, and that is the Parks, Recreation, and Heritage. Questions, council, on this report? Any observations? Some great picture of Rec Park there, and so on and so forth. No observations. In that case, Councillor Alberni, do you want to move receipt of that report then, please?
That the monthly report from the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Heritage providing information about current departmental operations be received.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Council, the next item that we're looking at is bylaws, and from the City Clerk, we have a report of the public hearing, March 12th. Councillor Washington, do you want to move receipt of that, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the report of the public hearing held March 12, 2018 regarding bylaw number 4958 be received.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And then we have the five-year financial plan bylaw. Councillor Sauvé, could you please...
That the five-year financial plan bylaw 2018 to 2022, bylaw number 4960, be now finally adopted, signed by the mayor and clerk, sealed with the corporate seal, and numbered 4960.
Is there a seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And then, council, that brings us to Council Procedures Bylaw 2013, Amendment Number 4, Bylaw Number 4961. And this is, Councillor Minions, do you want to move receipt of that change, please?
That Council Procedures Bylaw 2013, Amendment Number 4, Bylaw Number 4961 be now finally adopted, signed by the Mayor and Clerk, sealed with the corporate seal, and numbered 4961.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. And there is no correspondence for action this meeting. Proclamations, we have one from the Parkinson's Society. Councillor Paulson?
I'd like to move that the letter dated March 19th, caught me off guard again, March 19, 2018, requesting that the month of April 2018 be proclaimed as Parkinson's Awareness Month in Port Alberni be received, and the month proclaimed as requested.
Is there a seconder? Second. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. Informational correspondence. We have correspondence from the City of Courtenay, a copy of a letter dated February 13th providing resolutions for the AVICC Annual General Meeting. From the UBCM, a letter dated March 6th providing an update on the status of the work being undertaken by the Working Group on Responsible Conduct. Minutes of the February 21st meeting for the Reconciliation Committee. From the Air Quality Council, their minutes of March 1st. And from the BC Farmers Salmon Association, a letter enclosing a copy of their Sustainability Progress Report. Any member of council wish to pull anything out from those? Councillor Alberni?
Yeah, I just want to mention the City of Courtenay AVICC recommendation. It's probably too much to ask the CAO to comment on it, but I just thought their suggestion, the Common Asset Management Policy, which seems to be a suggestion to have a common asset management policy across all municipalities for the province. That's pretty interesting. So I think I'll be doing some more research on it. But it'd be interesting to see what the CAO might have to say too.
CAO?
Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to ask staff to bring back a report on that, a brief report on our perception of value in that.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Seems to make sense rather than reinventing the wheel 250 times.
Yeah. Thanks.
Councillor Minions?
Thank you. I just wanted to highlight for the Reconciliation Committee minutes that tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. at the Barclay, 6:30, is our reconciliation workshop. So it's open to the public to attend. I know a few members of council will be there, and hopefully we get a really good turnout. Thank you.
I'm hoping that there will be some children there, frankly.
I think we have daycare.
Well, I'm thinking more, this is the next generation, and maybe they'll have some great ideas. I know I have two granddaughters visiting right now, and I've said to them that it'd be a great idea to come, and it wasn't, oh, Grandpa. It was, no, yeah, okay, we'd like to do that. We'd like to hear what you're discussing.
Yeah, that's great.
So, who knows? I hope other people will consider bringing their youngsters as well. Okay, Councillor Alberni, do you want to move receipt of that, please?
I move that informational correspondence items number 1 through 5 be received and filed.
And I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. There is no report from in camera, so that brings us to our individual reports, and the first one is mine. Council, April 13th, I attended an emergency planning meeting with BC Hydro and the ACRD and other folks. And it was about the LC Dam, Ash River, what would happen in the event that there was a catastrophic event and LC Dam collapsed. And interestingly enough, it'd take 4 hours and 15 minutes for that water to hit the city of Port Alberni. But it would be a major impact on our city. So that's something that there's a lot of thought going into. And then not to forget that there's also a dam at Great Central Lake that would be impacted in such a catastrophic event as well. April the 14th, we had an ACRD meeting. April the 15th, I was in Squamish for the Provincial Mayor's Caucus. Mayors from all over the province were there and heard some great sessions on that day. April the 20th, attended a meeting at the SAM manufacturing site here in town with Minister Donaldson and Minister Fraser about the increase in diversification of manufactured products and access to wood fiber here in this area. April 21st, attended Tech Development 101 for part of the day, and thanks to Mr. Deacon for organizing that. It was a great event, the part that I attended. I'm sure the whole day was amazing. Then I had to leave to head to Victoria for a housing meeting. And then at the end of the day, there was a budget meeting for the ACRD. Perhaps more on that later. And then April 22nd, did an interview with Business View magazine. It's a North America-wide online magazine. And our interview was about 20 minutes long, just talking about Port Alberni, some of the things that we've done, some of the ideas for the future and what have you, so that Port Alberni will be one of 3 British Columbia communities that are featured in next month's April's magazine. And April 24th, on Saturday, I was at the House of Gathering on the Hupetchessit First Nation for a cleanse for a friend of mine who's recovered from cancer, so I was privileged to be invited to attend that. It was a very, very amazing ceremony. And Council, that's my report. I move acceptance of my report.
I'll second it.
All in favor? Carried. Next item is the Regional District Report. Councillor Paulson.
Not a whole lot to report with regards to here, but there was a presentation by Bob Cole with regards to Sprout Lake water quality, but also Sprout Lake flood control. The broken log boom at the exit of the waters from Sprout Lake is still broken, and really it's a debris catcher. And the appeal was to try and reinstate that log boom and hopefully hire a contractor that could from time to time clean that area. And also he talked a bit about the effect that the Catalyst weir, they removed one of the sections from the weir and the difference that it did make this year in water escaping Sprout Lake. And Catalyst next year is talking about removing all of the sections, so it'll make a difference. Also, there's a rock right there that they've talked about for about 30 or 40 years to remove right by the weir. And his feeling was it's time for that to be removed as well. And it just changes the hydraulics of the river system right from Sprout Lake right down to the inlet. And the feeling is it would probably mitigate a lot of flooding concerns that we have. The other big one was the press release on the Consolidated Strategic Landfill Diversion Program, and that program was made possible thanks to the federal gas tax fund. So that's a big initiative for our community and with regards to our landfill and the future of that. The other one, I'm on my high horse now, is there was discussion about the province's speculation tax and how it may affect all British Columbians and not just affect the people that they're going after. And the regional district in Nanaimo is one area, so if you happen to have a property in Qualicum or Parksville that your family uses, in our case, we do have a property over there, and I will tell you that the speculation tax will be greater than the property tax that we pay right now. And it just puts it into a realm where actual BC owners, probably for some of their holiday property or the recreation property, won't be able to continue on with that. And it takes that tax from $4,000 to about $10,000 a year, and I'll tell you, our family can't afford that. So I hope that the province looks at it and modifies it, and there is one community on the island that they have relented to. So
I think actually that just happened today. That announcement
Yeah.
was made today, and Minister James announced that that tax was going to apply to the city limits of the city of Nanaimo, not the Gulf Islands, not anything outside of that.
because I thought it was just the Gulf Islands that they went to, but
No.
anyway, I'm a little upset.
So it's okay she heard you? You're
Thank
fine.
you. So anyway, that was kind of my report on the ACRD.
You moving acceptance of your report?
And acceptance of my report, unless you have something to add, Mr. Chair.
No, I'll second it. All those in favor? Carried, thank you. And then that brings us to councillors' reports. Councillor Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Short but sweet. Met with the Kiwanis on the 20th and had discussions about the 33rd annual Our Town program coming up this year. And of course, the 47th annual Port Alberni Salmon Festival coming up this Labor Day weekend. And then talked about more of the more development down at the Canal Waterfront Park. That's my report.
Thank you. And Councillor Alberni?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Same thing, not too much to report, but just want to encourage folks to get out to the Reconciliation Committee, the event tomorrow, and I'm hopefully going to be there as well. I know there was also really good attendance at the meeting at the Italian Hall over the weekend about backwood access. So good to see that there's lots of kind of stuff going on around the community, and people are getting engaged. So that's it for me.
Thank you. And Councillor Minions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify, I think the doors open at 6 p.m. for the reconciliation event tomorrow. So I think I said 6:30. The only thing I'll add is I had a library board meeting last weekend. It was a good meeting, hearing about some programs that they are adding. And we also discussed afterwards, we had a meeting about our specific branch and the renovation that's being planned and what that could potentially look like for our location. And then just some talk about funding models and possible options for our community. So a good meeting and hopefully more to report soon.
Thank you. And Councillor Paulson?
Not a whole lot to report, just the ACRD meeting on the 14th. Caught the tail end of the Community Investment Program meeting that day, and that evening went on to the Canada Day planning session, and it looks like Canada's going to happen, but they're still really running volunteer-wise on a shoestring there, and they really need nobody to step to the plate to be the chairman of that committee, and it could be co-chairs, it could be 4 chairs to spread the work, but I just can't appeal enough to the public. If you want this to be a really good event for our community, not just this year, but for the future, that they really need some people to help. And on the 21st was the ACRD special meeting in the evening with regards to their presentation of their 5-year financial plan, and their 5-year financial plan is available on their website as well. And lots of highlights there, but big document, so that's my report. Thank
Over 5% increase.
Yep.
Councillor Sobe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the 23rd, we had our Alberni Valley Community Stakeholders Initiative to End Homelessness. Meeting went well. We got a few stakeholders coming back to the committee, which is nice to see. And we're inviting more to attend, and it's open to the public, so please review what the city bulletin is and when the next meeting is. Coming from that, we have the 2018 homeless count. That's going to be occurring on April 11th in our community. On the 24th, during the day, I attended the MLA Scott Fraser facilitating the back road access consultation with the public, and so that was very well attended, so I enjoyed the information that was able to be shared at that point. And from there, the MLA writes his final report to the minister, and with recommendations and some solutions. And as you can see with Island Timberlands, that we're starting to get some progress into getting more access to our back roads. During the evening, just to announce, the senior constable Ed Bigerman is retired from this community. He spent several decades in this community, and we wish him the best of luck in his retirement. On the 25th, on Sunday the 25th, the Seniors Advisory Committee, being part of it, facilitated at the Chapel of Memories, a seniors safety seminar of some sort. So thank you for the Chapel of Memories for sponsoring that, and that finished my report, and I'll move to accept mine and everybody else's report, Mr. Mayor.
Seconder?
Second, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. There is no new business. It brings us then to question period. It's an opportunity for public and press to ask questions of mayor and council. Seeing none, motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.